In this video, we're going to talk about how to figure out your illustration pricing strategy. Now, if you're like me, you've probably found yourself scratching your head over the age-old question, how do I figure out my illustration pricing? And it's actually a dilemma that has stumped many illustrators, from those just starting out to people who've been illustrating for a while. And in this video, we're going to dive deep into the world of illustration pricing, exploring both the emotional and practical aspects that come into play. We'll look at different pricing models, the concept of value, and even into the nitty-gritty of how to negotiate your rates. I remember when I first started out, I was more comfortable spending hours outside drawing mushrooms or animals in my sketchbook than figuring out what price tag to put on my work. It felt like trying to put a monetary value on a piece of your soul. Over time, I realized that understanding the intricacies of illustration pricing was not just a necessity, but an art form in itself. And it's a balance between things like self-worth, market value, and the unique style or approach you have that only you can bring to the table. Now, let's get real for a moment. Illustration pricing isn't just about numbers and market rates. It's deeply tied to how we view ourselves. Our self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-worth often act as the invisible brushstrokes that color our pricing strategy. When we're unsure of our value, we tend to undervalue our work. It's like filling dozens of sketchbooks and hiding them in a drawer because you're not sure they're good enough to show. This emotional struggle often leads us into the treacherous waters of underpricing. We think if I price my illustrations lower, I'll attract more clients. But what we're really doing is setting a precedent that our work, and by extension, we ourselves, are not worth much when it comes to illustration. When I first started out, I was completely lost with illustration pricing. I had my art, my passion. I had a burning desire to get out in the world and start making money with my work. But when it came to putting a price on my work, I was lost. I undervalued my work, thinking that's what I needed to do to get my foot in the door. It took time, experience, a few hard lessons to realize that my emotional outlook was actually shaping my pricing strategy more than a going rate, quote unquote, in some book ever could. First and foremost, you've got to understand your costs. Think of it like packing for an expedition. If you wouldn't set out without knowing what supplies you need. These are tools of your trade, your software subscriptions, the cost of your drawing tablet, marketing expenses if you have any, and even that cup of coffee that you drink every day that fuels your creativity. All of these things add up and should be factored into your illustration pricing. Don't forget, you've got to keep the lights on and the fridge stocked. Your living expenses are as much a part of your business as your sketchbook. So that includes your rent or mortgage, all those boring expenses. So when calculating your illustration pricing, make sure you're earning enough to not just survive, but thrive. You don't want to just break even every month. You want to be able to save money too. So you have to factor in a profit margin. And, I always pretend each project needs to take care of me for twice as long as it takes to finish the project. If I'm working for a whole month on a project, I want to take a month off after. So I factor in making enough money to cover my costs for not just the time I'm working on it. As a freelance illustrator, you're an entrepreneur. If you get sick or for some reason can't work or you get burned out, you need money to take care of you and provide a lifestyle to cover your costs if you aren't working or decide not to work for a month or two. So you have to factor things like that into your pricing. Now, there are two approaches to illustration pricing. There's project-based pricing and value-based pricing. First up, let's tackle the ins and outs of project-based pricing. First, define your base rate. Your base rate is the cornerstone of your project-based illustration pricing. It's like choosing the right paper for your sketch. Everything else builds upon it. This rate should cover your costs, both business and living, and leave room for profit, like I mentioned before. Estimate the total hours you're probably going to work on this project, and you don't have to tell your client how many hours you're working on it. This is just for yourself and your own record. And remember, we're not just talking about the time you spend sketching or painting. Include time for client meetings, revisions, and even those moments of creative pondering and research. And then, like I said before, build in your profit. Don't shy away from profit. Your talent, your time, and your unique perspectives are all valuable. Add a profit margin into your base rate to ensure you're not just surviving, but also thriving in the future. Value-based pricing is where the lines between art and commerce start to get blurred. Your illustrations aren't just visuals. You have to understand they're catalysts that drive value. If someone's selling a puzzle and it's your illustration on the puzzle, they're buying the puzzle because of your illustration, not because of how the cardboard is cut. Therefore, your art has a lot of value to the client, and it should be reflected in your illustration pricing. Now, there are situations where art licensing is going to be a bigger deal in value-based pricing, but in this video, we're just going to talk about value-based pricing. We're just going to touch the surface of it. So value-based pricing is like sketching a scene, not just for its visual elements, but for the emotions it evokes. You're not just selling a picture, you're selling a feeling, an impact, a transformation. To do this effectively, you need to understand the value your work brings to your client's project. Will it drive sales? Will it enhance the brand image? The answers to these questions should be reflected in your pricing. So let's imagine you're creating illustrations for a gourmet chocolate brand. Your art will be on the packaging of over 10,000 tins, each selling for $25 each. So if the client sells all of these tins, they're going to make $250,000 in sales. Your illustrations aren't just decoration or a nice to have. They're a sales driver for this product. In a scenario like this, charging only $600 would be way too low. Your value-based illustration pricing here could easily be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Now let's switch canvases. You're working with a local coffee roaster who sells 100 bags of coffee a month at $20 each. The scale is smaller, and so is the value your illustrations bring. In this case, a 5-figure pricing would be way overkill. Your illustration pricing should reflect this smaller scale, perhaps a modest fee and maybe a percentage of sales, but then we're starting to get into art licensing. Now, I can definitely make more videos about pricing and the ins and outs of making money as an illustrator. If you have any questions, please ask them below in the comments. And if you like this video, hit the like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Thanks.